The last thing Ethan Blackwood said to me before I lost everything was, "Trust me." 3 days later, I was standing in the rain with a cardboard box in my arms, watching the gates of the Blackwood estate close behind me for the final time. The sound echoed through the storm like a door shutting on an entire chapter of my life. I remember staring at those iron gates, unable to move. Water soaked through my jacket. My sneakers were already filled with rain. But none of that mattered. Because for the first time in nearly 2 years, I had nowhere to go. The security guard avoided looking at me. That hurt more than it should have. Just a week earlier, he'd greeted me every morning with a smile and a cup of coffee from the staff kitchen. Now he stood under the covered entrance pretending I didn't exist. Maybe that was easier. Maybe pretending I was invisible made what happened feel less cruel. My fingers tightened around the cardboard box. Inside were the pieces of a life that suddenly didn't belong to me anymore. A few books. A framed photo of my grandmother. A sweater I'd left in the laundry room. Nothing valuable. Nothing worth fighting for. Kind of like me. The thought slipped into my head before I could stop it. Across the estate grounds, the mansion glowed against the gray afternoon sky. 4 stories of stone, glass, and old money. It looked exactly the same as it had the day I first arrived. Untouchable. Perfect. Like the people who lived inside it. Especially Ethan Blackwood. America loved Ethan Blackwood. Billionaire tech genius. Magazine covers. Business awards. Interviews where he spoke about innovation and changing the future. People called him visionary. Brilliant. Untouchable. They never saw the man who wandered into the kitchen at 2 in the morning unable to sleep. They never saw the exhaustion behind his eyes. They never saw the loneliness. I did. And maybe that was my mistake. A black SUV rolled slowly toward the front entrance. My heartbeat stumbled. Even from a distance, I recognized the vehicle. Ethan's. For one impossible second, hope flared inside me. Maybe he had found out. Maybe there had been a misunderstanding. Maybe he was coming to stop this. The SUV stopped beneath the covered driveway. The driver's door remained closed. Nobody got out. I stood there in the rain waiting. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then the vehicle pulled away. Just like that. I felt something crack quietly inside my chest. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Something worse. Acceptance. He wasn't coming. I lowered my eyes and started walking toward the road. One step. Then another. The rain blurred everything around me. The mansion disappeared behind curtains of gray water. The world became nothing but wet pavement and the weight of the box in my arms. I didn't look back. If I looked back, I might have stayed. And staying would have destroyed whatever dignity I had left. My phone vibrated inside my pocket. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something made me stop beneath a street lamp and pull it out. The screen showed an unknown number. One message. Just 6 words. My breath caught instantly. Because I knew exactly who it was. The message read, "Don't leave town. I'm looking for you." The message stayed on my screen for the entire bus ride across town. I must have read those 6 words 100 times before the battery finally dipped below 10%. Do not leave town. I am looking for you. Outside, the rain continued to streak across the windows, turning the city into a blur of headlights and reflections. Every few minutes I told myself to delete the message. Every few minutes I failed. By the time I reached my apartment building, the sky had turned dark. The old brick structure looked exactly as tired as I felt. 3 floors. No elevator. A lobby that always smelled faintly like laundry detergent and old carpet. Home. At least for now. I climbed the stairs carrying the cardboard box against my chest. My arms ached by the 2nd floor. My heart ached by the 3rd. Apartment 3B greeted me with silence. The kind of silence that settles into furniture and walls after too many years of struggle. I set the box on the kitchen table and stared at it. Then I stared at my phone. Then back at the box. I had spent nearly 2 years working inside one of the largest private estates in New York. 2 years waking up before sunrise. 2 years making beds, organizing closets, polishing floors that looked too perfect to walk on. And now everything I owned fit inside a cardboard box from the estate storage room. A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. It sounded dangerously close to tears. My grandmother used to say life could change between breakfast and dinner. I never believed her. Now I did. The phone vibrated again. My pulse jumped instantly. Another message. Another unknown number. I opened it without thinking. This time there were only 3 words. Answer your phone. I stared at the screen. Then I locked it and tossed it onto the couch. No. Not this time. If Ethan Blackwood wanted to talk, he could have done it before I was escorted out of the estate like a problem nobody wanted to discuss. He could have stopped it. He could have said something. Anything. Instead he had watched me leave. I opened the refrigerator. Half a carton of milk. Eggs. Leftover soup. The ordinary contents of an ordinary life. Somehow that made me feel better. Billionaires had private chefs and wine cellars. I had canned soup and overdue utility bills. At least I knew where I stood. The next morning sunlight pushed through the curtains and landed directly across my face. For a moment I forgot everything. Then reality returned all at once. The estate. The firing. The messages. Ethan. I rolled over and reached for my phone. 7 missed calls. All from unknown numbers. My stomach tightened. Before I could decide what to do, someone knocked on the apartment door. Once. Twice. Calm. Deliberate. Not a neighbor. Not a delivery driver. My heartbeat thundered inside my chest as I crossed the room. Slowly I looked through the peephole. And the moment I saw who was standing in the hallway, every thought vanished from my mind. My breath caught so hard it hurt. Standing outside my apartment door was not Ethan. Somehow that would have been easier. It was Victoria Blackwood. Ethan's mother. Even through the peephole she looked exactly the same as she always had. Elegant. Perfect. Untouchable. Her silver coat probably cost more than my monthly rent. A leather handbag rested on her arm. Her expression revealed absolutely nothing. She knocked once more. Calm. Patient. Certain I was inside. For a moment I considered pretending nobody was home. Then I remembered who she was. People like Victoria Blackwood did not leave until they got what they wanted. I unlocked the door. The moment it opened, the scent of expensive perfume drifted into the hallway. She looked past me and into the apartment before her eyes finally settled on my face. Grace. My name sounded strange coming from her. Mrs. Blackwood. She glanced at the cardboard box still sitting on the kitchen table. Nothing escaped her notice. May I come in? Everything inside me wanted to say no. Instead I stepped aside. She entered without another word. The apartment suddenly felt half its normal size. Victoria walked slowly through the living room, studying the worn furniture, the faded curtains, the stack of library books beside the couch. Not with cruelty. Somehow that would have been easier too. She looked at everything with curiosity. Like a person visiting a country she had only read about. Finally she sat down and folded her hands in her lap. Ethan does not know I am here. That surprised me enough to silence every prepared response. Then why are you here? She held my gaze for several seconds. Because my son has not slept in 3 days. The words landed harder than I expected. I looked away first. Outside a siren echoed somewhere in the distance. Victoria continued. He is making mistakes. Missing meetings. Ignoring investors. Last night he cancelled a board presentation that took 6 months to organize. None of that sounded like Ethan. The Ethan I knew planned every minute of his day. The Ethan I knew remembered details other people forgot. The Ethan I knew never lost control. Why are you telling me this? I asked quietly. Victoria's expression softened for the first time. Only slightly. But enough. Because I think you deserve the truth. My pulse quickened instantly. What truth? She inhaled slowly. The decision to remove you from the estate was not Ethan's. The room seemed to tilt. Every emotion I had spent days building suddenly collided inside my chest. Confusion. Hope. Anger. Relief. Fear. Then whose decision was it? For the first time since arriving, Victoria looked uncomfortable. Her eyes drifted toward the window. Toward the gray New York skyline beyond it. When she spoke again, her voice was lower. There are people who would do almost anything to become part of the Blackwood family. I stared at her. She stared back. Then she said 7 words that changed everything I thought I knew. Grace, somebody wanted you gone from the beginning. The apartment suddenly felt colder. Victoria's words lingered in the air long after she stopped speaking. Somebody wanted you gone from the beginning. I stared at her, searching for any sign that this was some kind of misunderstanding. Instead I found something unexpected. Regret. It flickered across her face so briefly I almost missed it. Who? I asked. My voice sounded smaller than I intended. Victoria looked down at her hands. For the first time since arriving, she seemed less like the powerful matriarch of the Blackwood family and more like a tired mother carrying a burden she did not want to discuss. Before I answer that, there is something you need to understand. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. The city moved on without caring that my entire world was shifting beneath my feet. Victoria exhaled slowly. 6 months ago, Ethan was not the same man. My chest tightened. 6 months ago. Before everything fell apart. Before the messages. Before the accusations. Before whatever invisible war had been happening around me. What do you mean? She gave a faint smile. I mean he barely spoke to anyone unless absolutely necessary. He worked constantly. He skipped holidays. Family dinners. Birthdays. There were entire weeks when I only learned he was alive because his assistant updated my office. That sounded familiar. Not because I had known Ethan back then. But because I remembered the stories staff members used to tell. The billionaire who lived inside a mansion that felt more like a museum. The man who had every luxury imaginable and somehow looked lonely standing in rooms full of people. Victoria continued. Then one day something changed. I already knew where this conversation was going. My pulse sped up anyway. The staff started mentioning a maid who argued with him. I blinked. Argued? A tiny laugh escaped her. Apparently you corrected him when he blamed the kitchen staff for a scheduling mistake that was actually his. Heat rushed to my face. I remembered that day. The memory arrived so clearly it felt like stepping backward through time. Ethan standing near the dining room table. Expensive suit. Coffee in one hand. Frustration written across his face. Everyone else too nervous to speak. And me saying, perhaps a little too directly, that the schedule on his tablet had been updated 3 days earlier. Silence had filled the room afterward. I had fully expected to lose my job. Instead Ethan had looked at the screen, realized I was right, and quietly apologized to everyone. Victoria smiled at the memory. Do you know what happened next? I shook my head. He asked for your name. My breath caught. Then he started noticing things. He came home earlier. He spent less time at the office. He smiled occasionally. Her eyes softened. The household had not seen that in years. I looked away, suddenly unable to meet her gaze. Because hearing those words hurt more than I expected. If any of this was true, then none of it made sense. Not the firing. Not the silence. Not the distance between us now. Victoria reached into her handbag and removed a folded photograph. She placed it gently on the coffee table between us. The person who wanted you gone, she said quietly, is standing right next to Ethan in this picture. I lowered my eyes toward the photograph and immediately felt my stomach drop. The photograph looked harmless at first. A charity gala. Crystal chandeliers. Formal smiles. Wealth wrapped in elegance. Then I saw her. Olivia Kensington. My stomach tightened instantly. She stood beside Ethan with one hand resting lightly on his arm. Beautiful. Polished. The kind of woman magazine covers seem to invent. Blonde hair. Designer gown. Perfect posture. She looked exactly like someone who belonged in Ethan Blackwood's world. Unlike me. I swallowed hard. Olivia? Victoria nodded. The daughter of one of our oldest business partners. I kept staring at the picture. I remembered seeing Olivia at the estate more than once. She always arrived without warning. Staff members rushed to accommodate her. She treated the mansion like she already owned part of it. Back then I never thought much about it. Why would I? People like Olivia noticed people like me about as often as they noticed furniture. Victoria leaned forward slightly. For years everyone assumed they would eventually marry. The words landed with unexpected force. I hated that. Hated the sudden ache that spread through my chest. Because I had never allowed myself to think about Ethan that way. Not at first. He was my employer. A billionaire. A man who lived in a different universe. Meanwhile I spent weekends comparing grocery prices and helping my grandmother manage medical appointments. Our worlds were not supposed to overlap. Yet somehow they had. Did Ethan want that? I asked quietly. Victoria's answer came immediately. No. I looked up. Then why was everyone expecting it? A tired smile crossed her face. Because it made sense on paper. I almost laughed. On paper. Not in real life. Not in the quiet moments when nobody was watching. Not in the early mornings when Ethan drank coffee in the kitchen because he hated eating breakfast alone. Not in the evenings when he lingered near the library asking questions he pretended were casual. Questions about my grandmother. My favorite books. My childhood. Things that had nothing to do with business. Things that mattered. Victoria folded her hands. Olivia does not like losing. Something in her tone made me pay closer attention. When Ethan started spending time with you, people noticed. I remembered the whispers. Staff conversations stopping when I entered a room. Strange looks. Small changes that seemed meaningless at the time. Then the rumors began. I felt my heartbeat quicken. What rumors? Victoria hesitated. That you were manipulating him. I stared at her. What? That you were using his attention to improve your position. That you wanted access to his money. His influence. His name. The words felt absurd. Almost laughable. Yet suddenly dozens of uncomfortable memories clicked into place. Cold stares. Conversations ending abruptly. Invitations withdrawn. Tiny moments I had dismissed. My hands tightened around the edge of the couch cushion. And people believed that? Victoria held my gaze. Enough people did. Silence settled between us. Outside a car horn echoed somewhere below. Finally I looked back at the photograph. At Olivia's flawless smile. At Ethan standing beside her. Then I noticed something I had completely missed before. Olivia was smiling for the camera. Ethan was not looking at the camera at all. He was looking at someone across the room. Someone outside the frame. Victoria followed my gaze and spoke softly. That photograph was taken the night before everything changed. My pulse stumbled. What happened the next day? Victoria reached into her handbag again and removed a folded envelope. That, she said quietly, was the day Ethan asked me about you. My fingers hesitated above the envelope. Something about it felt heavier than paper should. Victoria watched silently as I opened it and slid a single folded sheet onto the coffee table. The handwriting was unmistakably Ethan's. Clean. Precise. Controlled. Even his notes looked disciplined. I stared at the page. Then I began to read. The first line stole the air from my lungs. It was my name. Not a business note. Not a household report. Just my name written by itself at the top of the page. Grace Miller. Beneath it sat a short list. Favorite author. Coffee with 1 spoon of sugar. Calls grandmother every Sunday. Volunteers at the community library twice a month. Keeps emergency snacks in her locker because she worries other people forget to eat. My eyes blurred. I remembered every one of those moments. Tiny details from ordinary days. Things I never imagined anyone noticed. Especially not him. Victoria spoke softly. That was the day I realized my son was in trouble. I looked up. Trouble? A faint smile touched her lips. The kind no amount of money can solve. I lowered my gaze back to the page. More notes filled the bottom. Questions. Simple questions. What was her dream before life became difficult? Why does she always smile when she talks about books? Has anyone ever told her how remarkable she is? My chest tightened painfully. Ethan had written those words months ago. Long before anything happened between us. Long before I allowed myself to wonder why his eyes always seemed to find me in crowded rooms. Long before I caught myself looking for his car in the driveway without meaning to. Victoria leaned back in her chair. He asked me about you for nearly an hour. I laughed softly in disbelief. Why would he ask you? Because he was terrified. That answer surprised me enough to forget my sadness for a moment. Ethan Blackwood. Terrified. The man who negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking. The man reporters described as fearless. The man who could walk into any room and immediately command attention. Terrified of what? Victoria's eyes softened. Of caring about someone who could walk away. Silence filled the apartment. Outside, the clouds had finally started breaking apart. Thin strips of sunlight slipped between the buildings across the street. I looked down at the letter again. Suddenly dozens of memories rearranged themselves inside my mind. The extra coffee left beside my workstation on difficult mornings. The books that mysteriously appeared in the library after I mentioned wanting to read them. The evenings when Ethan lingered just a little longer than necessary during conversations that had no reason to continue. None of it had been accidental. My throat tightened. Then why did he let me leave? The question escaped before I could stop it. Victoria looked away. For the first time all morning she seemed uncertain. Because somebody convinced him that protecting you meant losing you. A chill moved through me. Olivia? Victoria nodded slowly. Then she stood and picked up her handbag. There is something else you need to know. My pulse quickened again. She walked toward the door before stopping. When she turned back, her expression was grave. Grace, the accusations against you were never supposed to end with your dismissal. Every muscle in my body went still. What does that mean? Victoria's answer came quietly. It means somebody is still trying to make sure Ethan never finds you. After Victoria left, the apartment felt impossibly quiet. I stood by the window long after her car disappeared into traffic, replaying every word she had said. Somebody was still trying to keep Ethan away from me. The idea sounded ridiculous. My life had never been important enough for conspiracies. I was a maid. A woman with overdue bills and a grandmother who worried if I forgot to call before dinner. Yet somehow I had become part of a story far bigger than myself. My phone sat on the coffee table. Silent now. The missed calls remained on the screen like unanswered questions. For the first time, I wondered if ignoring them had been a mistake. I picked up the device and opened my messages again. The last one still waited there. Do not leave town. I am looking for you. I stared at the words until another memory surfaced. A rainy evening 3 months earlier. The estate library. Ethan sitting across from me with a book he was pretending to read. Every 10 minutes he glanced at the same page without turning it. Finally I had laughed and asked if he planned to finish that chapter before retirement. The look on his face had been priceless. Surprised. Almost embarrassed. Then he smiled. A real smile. Not the polite version he gave reporters. Not the controlled version he wore at business events. A genuine smile that transformed him into someone unexpectedly human. The memory hurt more than I wanted to admit. A sudden knock interrupted my thoughts. My heart jumped instantly. I crossed the apartment and looked through the peephole. Nobody. Confused, I opened the door. The hallway was empty. Then I noticed a large envelope resting against the frame. My name was written across the front. No return address. No explanation. Just Grace. I picked it up and carried it inside. Every instinct told me to be careful. Every instinct also told me I needed answers. Inside was a folder. Photographs. Printed emails. Event schedules. I spread everything across the kitchen table. At first none of it made sense. Then a pattern emerged. Olivia's name appeared repeatedly. Charity events. Private meetings. Family gatherings. More importantly, several dates matched moments when strange rumors about me had started circulating through the estate. My pulse quickened. Whoever assembled this information wanted me to see something. At the very bottom sat a folded note. The handwriting was unfamiliar. I opened it carefully. There was only one sentence. Follow the dates. She was never where she claimed to be. I read it twice. 3 times. Then my phone rang. An unknown number. Again. This time I answered before fear could stop me. Silence greeted me at first. Then a voice I would have recognized anywhere spoke quietly through the speaker. Grace? My knees nearly gave out. Ethan. For a moment neither of us said anything. Months of confusion seemed to hang between us. Finally he exhaled. The sound carried exhaustion. Relief. Desperation. Please, he said softly. Before anyone else reaches you, let me explain what really happened. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. Ethan's voice filled the silence of my apartment, and suddenly every wall felt too close. I gripped the edge of the kitchen table to steady myself. Explain what? I asked quietly. Across the line I heard movement. A car door closing. Distant traffic. Then silence again. Everything, he said. His voice sounded rougher than I remembered. Less controlled. The rumors. The investigation. Why I let you leave. Pain flashed through me at the last part. You did let me leave. The words escaped before I could stop them. Silence answered me. Long enough to hurt. I know, he finally said. And if I could change that day, I would. I closed my eyes. That should have made me feel better. It did not. Because apologies were easy. Living through the consequences was harder. Ethan exhaled slowly. Grace, 3 months ago someone delivered financial records to my legal team. I frowned. What kind of records? Documents showing money transfers connected to one of my private accounts. Confusion twisted inside me. What does that have to do with me? Another pause. Then came the answer. The records listed your name. My stomach dropped. I stared at the photographs scattered across my kitchen table. Suddenly everything made terrible sense. They accused me of stealing? Not exactly. His voice tightened. They accused you of accepting money in exchange for private information about my company. I almost laughed from disbelief. Instead, I felt anger rising inside my chest. That is ridiculous. I know that now. The emphasis on now stung. Outside my window, a city bus rolled past, its headlights washing briefly across the room. Ethan continued. At first I refused to believe it. Then more evidence appeared. Emails. Account statements. Witness reports. I looked down at my hands. So you believed them? No. His answer came immediately. I believed somebody wanted me to believe them. That caught me off guard. For the first time since answering the phone, I hesitated. Ethan continued before I could respond. The problem was I could not figure out who was behind it. Every lead disappeared. Every answer created more questions. Meanwhile, the accusations kept growing. I glanced toward the envelope on the table. The anonymous photographs. The note. Someone had been moving pieces around a board neither of us understood. Then why send me away? I asked. This time his silence lasted longer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because the person behind it started targeting people close to you. My pulse quickened instantly. What? Your grandmother's medical appointments were accessed. Your apartment address appeared in private reports. Somebody was watching your life, Grace. A chill spread through me. The room suddenly felt colder. Smaller. Ethan spoke again. I thought if I removed you from the estate, the attention would stop. I sank slowly into a chair. Every emotion inside me collided at once. Anger. Relief. Fear. Confusion. None of it made sense anymore. It did not stop, did it? I asked quietly. Ethan's answer came immediately. No. Then I heard something unexpected. Not fear. Not frustration. Determination. Because this morning I discovered who started all of it. Every muscle in my body went still. Who? The line remained silent for 2 agonizing seconds before Ethan finally spoke a name I never expected to hear. My cousin, Daniel Blackwood. Daniel Blackwood. The name echoed through my mind long after Ethan said it. I knew who he was. Everyone at the estate knew who he was. Daniel was charming in the way some people learn to be when they spent their entire lives surrounded by wealth. He smiled often. Remembered birthdays. Tipped generously during holidays. On the surface, he seemed impossible to dislike. Which made Ethan's accusation even harder to process. Your cousin? I asked quietly. Why would he do this? On the other end of the line, I heard Ethan exhale. The sound carried months of frustration. Because Daniel expected to inherit part of the company. I frowned. Expected? Until I announced changes to the ownership structure 6 months ago. My pulse quickened. 6 months. The same time period Victoria had mentioned. The same period when rumors began appearing around the estate. The same period when Olivia suddenly seemed to be everywhere. Pieces that never fit together before were starting to form a picture. What does that have to do with me? I asked. Ethan was silent for a moment. At first, nothing. His voice lowered. Then Daniel realized something I had not admitted to anyone. My heart started beating faster. What? Another pause. Then came the answer. That I cared about you. I closed my eyes. The room seemed to disappear. For months I had questioned every memory. Every conversation. Every glance. Every moment that felt important. Hearing the words spoken aloud changed something inside me. Not because they solved everything, but because they made the confusion real. Ethan continued before I could respond. Daniel understood that if he could not influence me directly, he could create enough chaos around you that I would make mistakes. I looked toward the photograph spread across my table. The anonymous envelope. The warnings. The accusations. Suddenly none of it felt random anymore. And Olivia? I asked. The question slipped out before I could stop it. Ethan hesitated. Olivia knew parts of what was happening. Pain flashed through me despite my efforts to remain calm. Did she help him? I do not know. His honesty surprised me. But I know she benefited from it. Silence settled between us again. Outside my apartment, footsteps echoed in the hallway. A door opened. Closed. Ordinary sounds from an ordinary building. Yet nothing about my life felt ordinary anymore. Finally Ethan spoke again. Grace, there is something I never told you. My chest tightened. What? His answer came quietly. The day you left the estate, I drove to your apartment. My breath caught. What? I sat outside for nearly an hour. Every thought vanished. Ethan's voice grew softer. More vulnerable than I had ever heard it. I wanted to come upstairs. I wanted to tell you everything. I wanted to ask you not to disappear. My grip tightened around the phone. Then why did you not? For several seconds there was only silence. Then Ethan answered with a truth that sounded painfully simple. Because I was afraid you would never forgive me. Before I could respond, another call suddenly flashed across my screen. An incoming number I did not recognize. Then a second message appeared beneath it. The sender was unknown. The words were only 5 words long. Do not trust Ethan Blackwood. The message appeared on my screen like a crack spreading through glass. Do not trust Ethan Blackwood. 5 words. 5 simple words that instantly pulled the ground out from beneath me. I stared at them while Ethan waited on the line. My heart pounded so loudly I barely heard my own breathing. Grace, he asked. Are you still there? I swallowed hard. Yes. I did not tell him about the message. Not yet. Maybe I should have. Maybe hiding it was a mistake. But after everything that had happened, trust felt fragile. Like something that could break if I touched it too quickly. Ethan spoke again. I know this is a lot. His voice sounded exhausted. But you need to understand something. None of this was ever about money. I glanced at the photographs scattered across the table. The documents. The anonymous notes. The warnings. Then what was it about? There was a pause. Then Ethan answered. Control. I frowned. Control over what? Over me. His reply came immediately. Daniel spent years building relationships inside the company. He expected certain things. Certain positions. Certain authority. When those plans changed, he started looking for leverage. My eyes drifted toward the rain beginning to fall outside the window. Tiny droplets streaked down the glass. And somehow I became leverage. Yes. The honesty in his voice left no room for doubt. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. Somewhere in the city, people were heading home from work. Ordering dinner. Living normal lives. Meanwhile I was sitting inside a small apartment trying to understand how a billionaire's family drama had somehow collided with my ordinary existence. Grace. Ethan's voice softened. There is something else. My stomach tightened instantly. Every important conversation lately seemed to begin with those words. What now? I asked quietly. I heard him exhale. The envelope you received today. My eyes snapped open. How do you know about that? Silence. Then a low laugh without humor. Because I received one too. My pulse quickened. What was inside? Photographs. Timelines. Records. He paused. And one picture I cannot explain. I looked around my apartment. Suddenly I became aware of every shadow. Every reflection in the darkening windows. What picture? Another pause. Longer this time. A photograph of you and me. Confusion flooded through me. There are no photographs of us. That is exactly why it matters. My heartbeat accelerated. Ethan continued. The picture was taken 6 months ago outside the estate library. You were holding a stack of books. The memory surfaced instantly. I remembered that afternoon. I remembered talking about novels. About my grandmother. About nothing important. Who took it? I asked. I do not know. His voice grew colder. More focused. But somebody was watching long before either of us realized it. A chill spread through me. I turned toward the apartment door without meaning to. Suddenly the walls no longer felt safe. Then my phone vibrated again. Another message. Another unknown number. My hands trembled as I opened it. This time there was a photograph attached. The image loaded slowly. And when it finally appeared on the screen, every drop of color drained from my face. Because the person standing outside my apartment building in the photograph was me. And the picture had clearly been taken less than an hour ago. My hands went cold. I stared at the photograph on my screen while my mind struggled to catch up. The image was clear. Too clear. I was standing outside my apartment building carrying a grocery bag. The timestamp in the corner showed it had been taken 43 minutes earlier. Whoever sent it was close. Close enough to watch me. Close enough to know where I lived. Grace? Ethan's voice pulled me back. What happened? I swallowed hard. They sent another picture. Silence. Then his tone changed instantly. Sharper. Focused. Of what? I looked out the window toward the street below. Pedestrians moved beneath umbrellas. Cars crawled through the rain. Everybody looked normal. Ordinary. Yet suddenly anyone could be the person behind the camera. It is me, I whispered. Outside my building. I heard Ethan stand up on the other end of the call. Listen carefully. Lock your door. My pulse accelerated. Ethan, Grace, please. The urgency in his voice stopped me. Lock the door. I crossed the apartment quickly and turned the deadbolt. The small metallic click sounded louder than it should have. Done. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then Ethan exhaled slowly. I am coming to get you. The words should have comforted me. Instead they created a new problem. No. Silence. What? No, Ethan. I closed my eyes. I cannot keep running from one Blackwood to another. The words hurt the moment they left my mouth. Because part of me regretted them instantly. Ethan did not sound angry. He sounded tired. You still do not trust me. It was not a question. I looked at the photographs covering my kitchen table. The rumors. The accusations. The months of confusion. I want to. My voice cracked slightly. But every time I start to believe one thing, something else happens. Silence answered me. Long, heavy. Honest. Finally Ethan spoke. Then let me give you something real. I frowned. What does that mean? Open your email. Confused, I grabbed my laptop and signed in. A new message had already arrived. Sender, Ethan Blackwood. Attached were legal documents. Ownership records. Internal reports. Hundreds of pages. What am I looking at? I asked. Proof. His answer came immediately. Everything my investigators found this morning. I scrolled through the files. Names. Dates. Financial records. Email chains. Then I saw Daniel's name. Again. And again. And again. The deeper I looked, the worse it became. Every accusation against me traced back to someone connected to Daniel. Every false report. Every anonymous complaint. Every suspicious document. My heart pounded harder with each page. This is real? I whispered. Yes. For the first time all evening, certainty entered Ethan's voice. And tomorrow morning the board will see it too. I leaned back in my chair. Months of confusion were finally beginning to unravel. Then something near the bottom of the report caught my attention. A familiar name. Olivia Kensington. My stomach dropped. Ethan. My voice barely worked. She knew. Silence filled the line. Then came the answer I had been dreading. Yes. I stared at the screen. At the evidence. At the dates. At the signatures. Olivia had known the truth for months. Then another message suddenly appeared on my phone. This one came from a number I recognized immediately. Olivia Kensington. The text contained only one sentence. If you want the whole truth, meet me alone tonight. The message sat on my screen while rain tapped softly against the apartment window. If you want the whole truth, meet me alone tonight. I read it 3 times before looking up. Ethan was still on the phone. Waiting. Grace? He asked. I hesitated. Then I told him. Silence followed. Not surprised silence. Frustrated silence. The kind that comes when someone fears exactly what they are hearing. Do not go alone, he said immediately. I rubbed my forehead. She says she will tell me everything. And she might. His voice remained calm. But there is a reason she waited until now. I looked at Olivia's message again. For months she had remained invisible while everything around me collapsed. Now suddenly she wanted to talk. Suddenly she wanted the truth to matter. What if she is the only person who knows what happened? I asked. Ethan exhaled slowly. Then I will be there too. An hour later I sat inside a small coffee shop near Central Park. The place was nearly empty. Soft jazz played through hidden speakers. Outside, rain painted silver lines across the glass. I chose a table near the window and checked the time for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Olivia was late. My stomach twisted tighter with every passing second. Then the door opened. She stepped inside wearing a dark coat and carrying no umbrella. For a moment she simply stood there looking at me. Gone was the flawless confidence I remembered. Gone was the polished smile from magazine photographs. She looked tired. Human. Almost frightened. Slowly she approached my table. Thank you for coming. I folded my arms. Start talking. Olivia glanced around before taking a seat. For several seconds she stared at her coffee cup without speaking. Then she finally looked at me. I never hated you. I almost laughed. That is how you want to begin? She flinched slightly. Because it matters. Her voice was quieter than I expected. The truth is I barely knew you. Rain continued to slide down the windows behind her. Olivia swallowed hard. Daniel approached me 8 months ago. My pulse quickened instantly. Why? Because he knew I wanted Ethan. At least she was honest. Olivia lowered her eyes. He told me you were temporary. That Ethan was confused. That if I helped create distance between you, everything would return to normal. I stared at her. And you believed him? Pain flashed across her face. I wanted to. The answer hurt because it sounded true. Olivia continued. At first it was only rumors. Small things. Comments. Suggestions. I told myself nobody would get hurt. Her voice cracked. Then it became bigger. Documents. Investigations. False reports. My hands tightened beneath the table. And you did nothing? She looked away. No. Silence stretched between us. Finally, Olivia reached into her bag and removed a flash drive. She placed it on the table. Everything is here. I stared at the small device. What is it? Olivia met my eyes. Proof. My heartbeat accelerated. Proof of what? Her answer came immediately. Proof that Daniel was never acting alone. Every thought stopped. The coffee shop suddenly felt too quiet. Too small. Then Olivia spoke the name that changed everything once again. The person helping him was a member of Ethan's board of directors. The flash drive sat between us like the answer to a question that had consumed months of my life. Outside the coffee shop, the rain had finally stopped. Streetlights reflected across wet pavement, turning the city into a sea of gold and silver. Olivia pushed the drive toward me. I already sent a copy to Ethan. Her voice was steady now. Resigned. Like someone finally tired of carrying a secret. By tomorrow morning, everyone on the board will know the truth. I stared at the small device. So much pain. So much confusion. So many sleepless nights. Reduced to a piece of plastic smaller than my thumb. Why tell me now? I asked quietly. Olivia looked toward the window. For a moment she seemed lost inside her own thoughts. Then she gave a sad smile. Because I spent months trying to become someone Ethan would choose. Her eyes returned to mine. Then I realized he had already chosen. The honesty in her voice surprised me. There was no bitterness left. No competition. Only acceptance. An hour later I stood outside the Blackwood corporate headquarters. The building rose above Manhattan like a tower of glass and light. For the first time since all of this began, I was not standing outside as an employee. Or an outsider. Or someone hiding from rumors. I was standing there because I deserved the truth too. Ethan was waiting near the entrance. The moment I saw him, something inside me became still. Not fixed. Not healed. Just still. For several seconds neither of us moved. The city rushed around us. Taxis passed. Traffic lights changed. People hurried home. Yet somehow everything faded into the background. Ethan looked exhausted. His tie was gone. His sleeves were rolled up. There were shadows beneath his eyes I had never noticed before. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man who had spent months fighting battles nobody could see. Slowly he approached. You came. I almost laughed. After everything, that is your opening line? A faint smile appeared. The first real smile I had seen from him in a very long time. Then his expression turned serious again. Grace. My name sounded different coming from him. Softer. More careful. I am sorry. The words hung between us. Simple. Honest. No excuses attached. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I nodded. Not because everything was forgiven. Not because the past had disappeared. But because sometimes healing begins when someone finally tells the truth. Ethan exhaled slowly. Relief flickered across his face. Above us, office lights continued glowing through the glass tower. Inside, lawyers, executives, and board members were already reviewing the evidence. Daniel's influence was ending. The lies were ending. The story that had controlled our lives for months was finally collapsing under its own weight. Ethan glanced toward the building and then back at me. The board offered me a statement for the press. I raised an eyebrow. And? I declined. That surprised me. Why? His answer came immediately. Because the most important conversation was never with reporters. My heart stumbled. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then Ethan held out his hand. Not as a billionaire. Not as a man asking for forgiveness he had not earned yet. Simply as himself. Would you let me start over? I looked at the hand. Then at the man standing before me. The city had tried to separate our worlds. Wealth had tried. Fear had tried. Pride had tried. None of them had won. Slowly I placed my hand in his. Warm. Real. Human. Ethan could buy almost anything on earth. Buildings. Companies. Entire futures. But the one thing he could never purchase was trust. That had to be earned. And for the first time, he was finally willing to try.